Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you are about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. I am currently doing a little bit of job searching, and by currently, I actually meant that actually mean that I've been doing it for a while. And over that time, I have found job offers all around Germany. For those of you who don't know, I actually live in Germany. Have lived for basically basically for a long time, even at the time I started this channel. And and anyway, as I was saying, I am currently doing some job searching. I am technically looking all around Germany. However, I have noticed that as far as job searching or more broadly living conditions are concerned, not all parts of this country are created equal. So in that sense, I thought it would make a potentially fun video to look at the various uh, federal states of Germany, or its Bundesländer, and rank them from worst to best. Because yeah, for those of you who don't know, the full name of Germany is the Federal Republic of Germany, which means that it is a a federal nation state divided into several smaller states. 13 of which are sizable, and then there are three regular states, and then there are three city states: Berlin, Hamburg, and Bremen. Though Bremen does actually kind of cheat for reasons I'll get into later. And this is a map of Germany, along with the flags um, of the respective Bundesländer. Some of them have their coats of arms in there. Some of them, some of them do something completely different. But for the purposes of this video, that will not particularly matter when it comes to my ranking of them. I am simply looking at them from a perspective of which one do I think would be most, most interesting, most enjoyable, and most fruitful to actually live in. And I do actually have some level of criteria to work with. Those are industry strength and variety, first of which. So, given I've started this video by talking about how I am about how I'm looking through the job market, obviously it does sell. Obviously, that will be my first point of discussion when it comes to these various, when it comes to the various Länder, because yeah, most people just call them Länder. They don't call them the full Bundesländer. Just like people from the U.S. don't call their states federal states. They just call them states. So anyway, when it comes to the individual lender, what is it a lender? What is it about them that what is it about their industry that makes them um, uh, that gives them the edge, uh, the edge more broadly in terms of in terms of how it is that they can attract people, and in terms of how it is that they become interesting to and that they become interesting for the purposes of making your own living. Second criterion, perhaps a little bit more of a nebulous one: landscapes. Everyone knows what a landscape is, but Germany, perhaps a little bit more broadly, does actually have a pretty high have a pretty high floor when it comes to that. So even the least attractive of the land that still has some interesting sites. Nevertheless, there are still some that are more interesting than others, so that is also a criteria, because while a place having an industry allows you to make a living, there are some things that make that particular living more fulfilling, and one of those aspects is being able to enjoy a landscape. Another aspect is culture. I'm not directly talking politics because, well, there are lots of individual uh, facets about German politics that I can that I can grumble for for basically ever. But culture is basically, is basically something, um, is simply the reflection of people's lived lives. So, what is it like to actually be there? What is it actually like to, um, what is it actually like to go through the motion and go through the motions and to experience life within within such within such land, within each individual land. Some could call this simply experience, but honestly, culture sounds like a better sounds like a better fit. And finally, the last criterion I'll be talking about, but perhaps definitely not the least, given I am given I am somewhat neurodivergent, at the very least on the autism spectrum, is transit. How easily can I get to it? How easily can I move around inside it? And I've already been talking about culture and landscapes, but you need a good transport or transit network to arrive at these various locations, and to really make the experience, to really help substantiate the experience which you'll have when living through this, when you'll have living in, in a particular land. This category could also be expanded upon to include social services more broadly, but I can't really assess social services more broadly, from my current vantage point, at least not effectively. So transit is really the best, is really the best placeholder for that, and everything else, could be could fall under culture, as in how effectively, as in or experience how how do people find it to actually live there, or what is my experience with, or how do I connect to the experience of living within that particular land. That being said, I do have some caveats that I have to make. First of all, I am in my uh, mid 30s, I think it is fair to say. I am white, I'm European, I'm male. So all of that will definitely factor into how, will definitely factor into how I am perceived and received within each, within each individual place. So, while I may be neurodivergent, there are still ways in which people are predisposed to me in ways they wouldn't be predisposed to, towards others. And as such, my lived experience or my impressions will not necessarily mirror your own. Second of all, while I do have criteria and based on which I am making these rankings, these criteria are not necessarily, these criteria are not necessarily set in stone. It's not like I've given every land a particular numerical value, then tally them up together in order to get to this ranking. This is really just my broad impressions on all of these, and the criteria that I've laid out will basically help me better verbalize what it is that I find interesting about each of these länder. And finally, just for fun, because just because a certain land is lower on the list than other, that doesn't necessarily mean I harbor any ill will towards it. Because even the worst Bundesland, when it comes to um, when it comes to the overall quality of life, is still still quite high. I actually think it is higher than it is higher than the national average of my birth country, for example. Maybe even higher than than the national high. I haven't really checked on that. So anyway, this is really just for fun. I mean no ill will towards anyone. This is this is simply something to shoot the breeze and maybe get a discussion going. Anyway, with that out of the way, we have 16 Bundesländer to go through, 3 of which are city states, as I've already said. The other 13 are called surface states, which for reasons of classification. Anyway, let's start. At number 16, we have Sachsen-Anhalt, or Saxony-Anhalt. And yeah, I'll be using the coat of arms of each Bundesland to to represent them. Could have also gone with the flag. I could have also gone with with a map of the actual land, but this is really the solution that I found most convenient. And I have to say, uh, this will be perhaps not surprising at all, but most of the bottom third of this list will consist of countries of the former GDR, or the former East Germany. And when it comes to the last two, it really was kind of a race to the bottom, a race that was won by Saxony-Anhalt, which I have to say, and I'll remind you that I started this, particular ranking endeavor looking through job listings, and the and I have to say Saxony-Anhalt had the least of them. Now I'm not gonna say it's economically a dead zone, because people still live there. They still have some level of activity. There are still cities and airfields uh, and shit like that. But it doesn't really draw my attention in any other way. It is not perhaps as this isn't really a place that is as shocking as it as or you know as or has or that has drawn or that has drawn any particular scandals to the extent that other parts of Germany have. But that doesn't mean that however, that doesn't really mean much to me. I am not seeing anything of significance that is reflected within the within the culture of this place. And transit, again, there are people who live there, but but I don't necessarily think there are particularly interesting or reliable connections there. So for that reason, I'm gonna say Sachsen-Anhalt is number 16. At number 15, we have Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, sometimes called Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania in the English-speaking world. For those of you who are curious, Eastern Pomerania is in Poland. I do have to say they have a pretty interesting coat of arms, all things considered. And they managed to squeeze just ahead of Sachsen-Anhalt because, well, I do actually have some a better understanding of what exactly characterizes Mecklenburg-Vorpommern for the most part. I can name more of its cities, even though most of the reason I know them is because they are unsurprisingly ends of the line for various intercity express trains, or high-speed rail connections. But beyond that, the Germany's Baltic coast is actually, when you look at it on the map, it is, it looks quite dramatic, quite spectacular, and that gives it perhaps a little bit of an edge when it comes to landscape, and it has a little bit of an edge when it comes to industry, because I do occasionally get job listings, from Rostock, from Schwerin, and and other such places. So there are things going on there. There are initiatives that I can describe as being as happening there. But still, there isn't really much that goes on in there. And in fact, there is a little bit of a stereotype about Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, and how there's nothing about how there's nothing there. So for that reason, this particular Bundesland makes it to number 15. At number 14, we have Brandenburg, or Brandenburg, depending on how you wish to pronounce it. That huge piece of land that surrounds Berlin. That is basically its main. That is basically its main claim to fame. It does occasionally get some level of, does get some level of negative press because of all of the far right and neo-Nazi groups that that it attracts. Beyond that, however, I will say it does actually have that as the bulk of the former Eastern Germany, it does actually have plenty of um, plenty of more interesting aspects to it when it comes to its when it comes to its history and when it comes to the ways in which it reflects the changing times, so to speak. Um, but beyond that, really, when it comes to its industry, most of the job offers that I have noticed are from places that are in the in the vicinity of Berlin. There aren't really a lot of noteworthy places beyond that, except at the Polish border. If you are to, if you are to look thoroughly enough. But beyond that, however, I can't really say there is anything that makes Brandenburg more distinctive, so it lands at number 14. By the way, I think I said it 3 times in 3 different ways. At number 13, Niedersachsen, or Lower Saxony. The first of the former West German Bundesländer that I actually mentioned, and it has this white horse galloping over over a red background. Fun fact: my history teacher, who is actually from Niedersachsen, had an email where he called himself Niedersachsen Pferd, the horse of Lower Saxony, aka this little figure. So to that end, I really mean no ill will to the people of Niedersachsen. I will say it does actually have an advantage in terms of the urbanization because there are because there are more things going on, and there are and I have noticed that there is plenty of there's plenty of actual economic activity. So it does have a strength, and so it does have its strengths um, in terms of industry and a and its own distinctive culture. I am less than impressed with the transit connections because whenever I've been through the Bundesland, I did actually notice some aspects I was less than pleased with, and overall, it is the second biggest of Germany's Bundesländer, and I find it to somehow also be the emptiest. Like occasionally there are, occasionally there are things, out the window that you can notice and look at, but it is primarily very agrarian, and I would argue the bread basket, or one of the bread baskets of this of modern Germany, and as such, it has a particular a particular reflection that doesn't that I don't really find particularly enticing. So for that reason, Niedersachsen makes it to number 12. At number 11, Sachsen, or Saxony. So yeah, back to the back to the former East, or former East Germany, because it's still because this place is still currently in the East, and it gets a little bit of an edge because this particular Bundesland actually has some very noteworthy cities both from a cultural perspective and from an industrial perspective, namely Leipzig, namely Dresden. And I could perhaps also argue that Saale deserves to be there, or no, I think that's actually in Sachsen-Anhalt. So anyway, but you have these two places, Dresden and Leipzig, that are significant cultural centers, and they regularly get and there are regular job offers that I get from those from those places as well. So so as far as that is concerned, there is plenty of economic activity there. Some level of cultural activity, I imagine, is also present, and and from what I've been able to notice about transit, it does have plenty of solid transit connections as well. Unfortunately, this place also happens to be home for some pretty egregious excesses, and as far as not just the far right being active there, but also but also more general unpleasantness. So so interesting as this place or as some of its places may be, the land as a whole doesn't really have enough going for it to make me to fully draw me in. So it only makes it to number 11. Cracking the top 10, now we have okay, that's actually number 12. So anyway, at number 11 we have Bremen, the first of the city-states to that I'll mention. And technically, there are technically two cities within Bremen, within the land of Bremen. Namely, it's Bremen itself, and then there is Bremerhaven, which is right at the coast of the North Sea. Bremen has pretty much distinguished itself for being the most left-wing city of Germany. Like it's constantly it has pretty much constantly been a red or a purple area on the on the German election map, and as such, I imagine it does have its and as such also as a former Hanse city. Hanse means is an old term for a trade union. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but the point is, it does actually have a very welcoming culture, and also, while I don't really hear a lot about any particular bad elements or bad aspects of Bremen that Bremen that would cause me to be concerned about it. Also, transit connections within the city or between the cities, I imagine, would be quite solid. Wait just a moment till I mute my phone. And back. That was a little bit weird for anyone who skipped right over to that moment. Anyway, as for Bremen itself, it does actually have plenty of interesting aspects to it. You'll notice that I didn't say much about job opportunities because I actually see them quite rarely from Bremen. I imagine they would prefer to to find people who are already there, but however, I can't really say that I find myself particularly interested in the city. I imagine it has it maybe has some more, some of a little bit more of a smaller town charm, even though it actually has like 200,000 people in it, if I'm not mistaken. And but otherwise I am I don't know. There simply isn't much about it that makes me interested. So for that reason, while I acknowledge it has some some good things about it, and assuming its transit connections are strong enough, which I don't know. I haven't really researched that acutely, but with everything else, I just I just know because casually looking up reveals plenty of answers. Anyway, when it comes to Bremen, I don't really see that, so it makes it to number 11. Now I'm gonna crack open the top 10 with Thüringen or Thuringia, and its very colorful logo. Thüringen does actually have one advantage over over a lot of other former former East German a lot of former East German areas by being the westernmost, and therefore I think it is fair to say that it has perhaps most effectively been integrated within it. Also, it is the home of the city of Weimar, which we might know from the name of the Weimar Republic, aka the name of the the name of the most significant German governance from the 20th century interbellum. And as such, it does have some level of historical significance that it does manage to highlight quite effectively. So in that sense, it does manage to preserve its culture quite well. Also, Erfurt, its capital, has a very interesting contrast in terms of what has been built before 1945 and what has been first built after 1945. And I have to say that when I visited the city, noticing that really kind of really kind of made some very pleasant sparks fall and fly from my brain. And so in that sense, it is perhaps one of the more interesting tourist destinations, at least for me, or when it comes to day trips in various cities. And I would argue that the rest of the land also has also has plenty of that, and it knows and plenty of such aspects that are well presented, and and given the fact that it is basically smack dab in the middle of in the middle of Germany, pretty much everything pretty much everything runs through it. So so its most important cities are very well connected, and even beyond that, there are plenty of connections that you can use to go to go anywhere you'd like and notice uh, and look at anything you'd be interested in. Unfortunately, I can't really say much for the economic activity that I've been able to uh, notice about the city, about the about Turingan. There aren't really a lot of job offers that I've received, and I can't really think of any notable news from from that area of Germany. So interesting as it may be, it only cracks the top 10. Closing out the bottom half of this list, at number 9 we have Saarland, the only part of Germany that was an autonomous region within the modern age. Given that between 1946 and 1957, it was actually an autonomous protectorate uh, uh, within the French administrative zone. And also, it kind of has a significant place in the history of association football, given that in 1950 it was the host of an invitational tournament for for a lot of the champions of association football in Europe at the time, a precursor of what is now known as the UEFA Champions League. So in that sense, Saarland has plenty going for it. Beyond that, beyond that, through the fact that it is part of the Saarlor Lux region, a uh, a a transnationally defined region that and transnationally defined region which also harbors connections to Luxembourg, Belgium, and France. There are plenty, there are therefore plenty of development opportunities and transit connections that allow this particular part of Germany to stand out. So in terms of transit, in terms of culture, it is quite well represented. When it comes to stuff like landscapes, I admit I don't really know. I don't really know much about it, and I haven't really talked much about those fields. But that is also, but that's also a potential reason why Bremen hasn't made it too high up. Um, Anyway, with Zotland, I imagine there are a few, but what really holds it at this place is that, just like a few others I've already mentioned, there aren't really a lot of job opportunities there. Maybe most of them are sort of locally, but still, it is but still it is noteworthy that I haven't really seen much. Also, while there is this transnational cultural connection within this part of Germany, there isn't really a lot that it does to really project it to the extent that I've seen other parts of the country do. So for that reason, Saarland is stuck at the at the top of this list's bottom end. Closing out bottom half, closing out the opening up the top half of this ranking, we have Rhineland-Pfalz or Rhineland-Palatinate. I'm not exactly sure how you get Palatinate from Pfalz or the other way around, or maybe they both have a common ancestor. Who knows? And this is their very fancy coat of arms. This particular part of the Germany has, I'll say, one very interesting part to it, namely Mainz, and the rest, which is actually very much on par with some of the with some of the lower ranks on this list. It does nevertheless still have its own its very distinct cultural identity, one that I think is also quite well projected nationwide, primarily because it is the main primarily because of the Rhine-Mosel area, which is which has a very rich cultural legacy. Uh, that is of note, and that has been speculated, and that has been marketed throughout for its various purposes. Aside from that, there is a strong cultural aspect to it. The landscapes are I have to say for the most part either average or above average when it comes to Germany. And given I already mentioned Germany has a high average, that's very good. That's very that is very good for them. Beyond that, I'll say transit could perhaps be better when it comes to Rhineland-Pfalz, but also when it comes to the industry options, I don't really think there are particularly many. They are, or if they are primarily focused around they're primarily clustered around certain cities, which is perhaps typical, but I don't know. When you combine that with the fact that they have the Rhine-Mosel area as the primary cultural nexus, I can't really say I am particularly impressed by it. So Rhineland-Pfalz only opens up the top half. Further down the list, we have Schleswig-Holstein, which I've sometimes noticed is called Schleswig-Holstein in English for some reason. It does have one of the one of the less aesthetic coats of arms of the of the Federation, but otherwise it is quite interesting to actually look at. Its tourism slogan is the True North, funnily enough, and I mentioned this because I did actually live in it for quite a while, and in the history of this channel. I think I've been, if you'll recall that segment of time in 2013 when I had a different backdrop. Well, yeah, that's basically where I was living, and that's basically where I was living, and I came there with a with a job opportunity, and I have to say once in Schleswig-Holstein, I did actually get to see that there are plenty of job opportunities. However, much of them seem to be clustered around certain industries, primarily maritime, which not surprising given it is, I think, the only German Bundesland that has coasts that has both a Baltic coast and a North Sea coast, and and beyond that, there are plenty of interesting aspects to it. It is also, and I will say that it is very welcoming, as in I trust its LGBTQ initiatives more than I trust the national average of of these of such initiatives, and and also, like, living there is is a very pleasant. It has a very effective and very humane use of space. that I found that I found interesting to that I found interesting to go through. Unfortunately, while it is very welcoming, there isn't really a lot going on there. So the fact that it is the fact that it is away from a lot of the from a lot of more eye-catching spots of Germany does ultimately does ultimately affect it. So for that reason, it only makes it to number 7. At number 6, we have Berlin, the main city and the highest ranked of the former highest ranked part of the country that used to belong to the former East. Well, okay, a lot of Berlin actually belonged to the former West because reasons. But still, now that it is united, I have no problem classifying it right over there. And I have to say that when it comes to Berlin, and when it comes to, there are two things that it does particularly well: culture and transit. Something that is often said about Berlin is that it is poor, but it is cool, and or rather, I think that's what it's like to actually live in Berlin as a day-to-day citizen, because obviously, as the seat of government power within the nation, there are parts of it that are quite well off, but then there's the rest, which pretty much does what it can, and perhaps unsurprisingly, what it can is very effective, very interesting, and uh, transit is quite effective, given it is given it is a singular city, and therefore it can really focus, and therefore it really only needs one singular authority to really make to really make everything work. In terms of landscape, or when it comes landscapes, it funnily enough has that, or rather it has sites, and all of that contributes towards the cultural history as well. Really the main weak point that I'll say Berlin has is actually industry, but not because of a lack of trying. Because I do actually still get plenty of job offers from Berlin, and it is still an economically rich and economically active area of Germany. Except, however, other parts of it are a little bit more, are a little bit more interesting, or a little bit more engaging. Maybe they don't have as much going on, but they are more specific when it comes to what it is that they've got going on. So Berlin, I have to say, I love you. You remind me a lot of the of my ex, the one ex I have the fondest feelings towards. So uh, so while I don't think you are while I don't think you are the best, I am very happy. I am very happy that you exist, and that's why you're here at number 6. At number 5, we have Hamburg, the second biggest city in Germany, and the third city state I've mentioned so far. So yeah, the highest ranked of the city states. Um, so why is it that I've put Hamburg over Berlin? Well, first of all, it has a little bit more going on. Like it very much comes across as a cultural center, more authentically so than Berlin. Like you really have the impression that Hamburg is actually very deliberate in terms of in terms of the various cultural initiatives that it brings out. Whereas with Berlin, it's a lot more spontaneous. That can be that is an advantage, so to speak. But the fact that Hamburg is more deliberate means that it has more effort being brought into it, and the fact that it has that has more effort brought into it means that people can afford to put more effort, which in turn means that other aspects of the city are more effective. I can very much vouch that the industry is better, or at least the presentation of the industry is better, more effective, more varied. Transit. well, it has again singular city, and it's a little bit smaller, so it has all of the, so it has to that extent the same advantages as Berlin, but with a smaller challenge. It is, it is quite effectively, put together. The only really the real really the real kicker here is that I don't really think it has the sights that Berlin has. It does have the Elbe that travels through it, and it does know how to how to utilize that for its for its for its tourism potential. But beyond that, I can't really say I am, and that every time I've been through Germany, I've been particularly impressed by how through Hamburg, I've been particularly impressed with how it was, with how it looked. Not when compared to other places. So while it does leave a good impression, it is not good enough to crack the top quarter of this list. At number 4, we have Baden-Württemberg. The this is not the richest of Germany's Bundesländer, but I think it has the highest per capita GDP, and also it has the lowest lowest income inequality, and it houses most of the a majority of the most well known, and I mean relative majority here, relative majority of Germany's most well known and well exported brands. It is very much an economic powerhouse. It is, I can also say that it is quite well connected, with plenty of, with plenty of transit options that would allow, that allow someone to get, that would allow someone to get anywhere with almost all means necessary. And and I will say it does, and I'll say it does capture my attention with how it manages to highlight its historical culture, and let's see, let's see what else I haven't covered. It does manage to showcase its history quite well. It is from a transit point of view. It is well connected. From a from an industry standpoint, it is it is arguably Germany's strongest land. Um, and when it comes to landscapes, it is I could very easily argue for it being or for it being either at the top or near the top of this list. So with all that going for it, why is Baden-Württemberg only number 4? Well, that really comes from the fact that having lived in Baden-Württemberg for about for some time, uh, back in 2024, you'll remember I had different backgrounds at the time as well. I I unfortunately do have to say that it is um, that it is dull, and not in the and not in the uh, not in the way not in the German typical ways people say that Germany is dull, with German meticulousness, Prussian efficiency, or a gray kind of dull, but rather it's a beige kind of dull, where people are, where people are all like, uh, this is no, this is where we work, this is what we this is what we do for fun, this is this is all, this is all our life, this is all that we this is what we have in our lives, and we are very happy about it. I don't really buy that. I don't really buy that happiness. Like, really, my impression of Baden-Württemberg really, pretty much says that it is that it is the very realization of the alienation of the human soul under capitalism. Yeah, I'm a Marxist. Don't be surprised I sometimes say shit like that. And yeah, Baden-Württemberg unfortunately really has that, really, really mirrors that kind of isolation, where everything, where even though it has a lot of things going in its favor, it really feels like it has, it really feels like everything that makes that thing effective really dulls any potential luster that it could have, that it could elicit. So for that reason, even though there are a lot of things it does well, Baden-Württemberg unfortunately misses the top three of this list. At number three, we have Nordrhein-Westfalen, or North Rhine-Westphalia. The which, if I'm not mistaken, is the most populous of the German Bundesländer, and it has the highest GDP of all Bundesländer. And also it primarily manages both of these by housing Germany's most industrially effective area, namely the Ruhr Valley and the Rhine-Ruhr area, which used to be very rich in coal, but has since renewed itself through its industrial capacity, through its capability to create industrial output, and that particular capability is realized in a lot of ways in all of these cities, each of which has its own distinctive cultural signature, making it making it very interesting to not just be there, but also hop around there. It is it is interesting to be there, and because there are so many people, there's a strong incentive to allow these people good free movement, and therefore the transit option is quite good as well. I imagine that if I were to actually live there, there would be a lot of things there are lots of things I would grumble about, but in the abstract, I think it is actually maybe not the best, but it is quite well developed. It does potentially suffer in terms of landscapes, with natural beauty potentially not being as good as it could have been, as it could be with other things. But in terms of every other aspect that makes this country, that makes Germany distinctive, and that and it creates a distinctive identity to one of its states. I think it's safe to say that Nordrhein-Westfalen really has that, and it is one of the more interesting parts of and is one of the more interesting parts of Germany to actually explore and to actually get to know. So for that reason, it gains the bronze medal and makes the number three. At number two, the silver medal goes to Bayern, or Bavaria. Yeah, Bayern is actually, I have to say, I've talked in, with at about other Bundesländer, namely about how it is that they can project their image, and Bayern in that sense is very effective with its flag randomly showing up everywhere, to the point where people very much assume that the default German is actually Bavarian, and that leads to a lot of accusations of being overrated, for Bayern as a whole. And I will say that that is true, but not by that much, because a lot of things that make that do make Germany distinctive do indeed stem from the image people have of Bavaria, but also these facts do actually give Bavaria its own distinctive edge, and a lot of its own distinctive identity. So when it comes to like cultural projection, it does actually, I will say it does win out. When it comes to the actual culture itself, or internally, it is actually surprisingly subdued and somewhat well divided between the various regions of Bayern. I should say that Bayern. I should right now say that Bayern is actually the largest of the of Germany's Bundesländer. However, you'd never really have that same feeling of emptiness of hollowness that you get from other Bundesländer that I would have mentioned. There is always something going on. There is always something there is always something of interest that is of note within some part of the land or other. So you'll never really have a dull moment, even though it is arguably among the more tradition focused. There is still plenty of innovation and plenty of and there are plenty of novelties and changes that you can get to know when you go through this land. And given it labels itself as a Bahnland or a train province, I will say it does actually do a decent job when it comes to its travel as well. You can get to a lot of places. It and it and it and the actual public transit coverage or transit coverage more broadly is very well put together, and you do actually have that level of flexibility that is quite effective, especially when considering the sheer size. Not to mention it has a lot of industrial centers. While I have mentioned that Baden-Württemberg has the lion's share or the relative majority of the most recognized or houses the lion's share of the most recognizable German brands, plenty of them are also headquartered in Bayern, and as such there are plenty of opportunities. There are plenty of changes and growth options that exist within its limits as well. So as such, it does actually bring plenty of very interesting options, including landscapes. Like this country is this or rather this state is beautiful to just look at, to just explore, and it manages to showcase its historical legacy quite effectively. And that's back because especially when you consider just how influential it was, really early back in the day within the Holy Roman Empire, and then later in its history as a counterweight within the German-speaking world to the Prussian Empire, and to the to the broader Prussian establishment that created the German state. While that history does have its darker parts, as history tends to do, it it is still nevertheless a very interesting part of Germany to live in, to explore, and to get to know. But it is not the best, and I'm pretty sure that for people who already know enough about the territorial administration of Germany, you probably already guess what the number one is. Hell, you might have been able to guess what the number one is as soon as I announced the number two. So I'm not gonna beat around the bush too much and say that the number one of Germany's Bundesländer, at least in my opinion, I'm awarding the gold medal to Hessen, or Hesse. I am now realizing that its coat of arms looks very similar to that of Thüringen, except rather than the lion getting the crown, it is the there's the coat itself that gets the crown. And admittedly, I do have to say that I am that I am biased because I currently live in Hesse or in Hessen. I have, and this was basically my the main place where I've lived ever since I moved over here, and ever since I actually started studying. I started my studies. I knew that I wanted to study in Germany, and there is and unsurprisingly a Hessian University was among the first to give me NA Hessian University was among the first to to invite me there. And I went to that university, but I primarily went through the city and went, yeah, this is where I want to study. This is where I want to live. And and I have to say that is that is an impression that has not that has not gone away from me since. I I very much enjoy my time here. I very much enjoy the uh, I very much enjoy being connected to being connected to this culture, to this to this part of Germany, which I find which I find very effectively mirrors my interests, my temper, my uh, and other aspects of me that really made me to really make me who I am. That is probably also because this is where I where I really grew up and really came into myself. But but that can, but I could just as easily say that about say something similar about my home country and how or about my birth country and how I decided to actually uh, move out of there and would still like to and would still primarily like to stay out of there. Um, or rather, I would prefer that. Uh, so in that sense, I don't just value it for for what it means to me. I also value it for for what it means to my past. I also value it for what it means to my present and for what I wanted to and for what I want to come what I want to come for it to come out of for what I want to get out of it in the future. So that's culture covered. Transit is for the most part quite effective. I can nitpick because I'm a local and therefore I notice a lot of things. But I do recognize that when there is an intervention, it does actually lead to some level of improvement. There is some there is there are plenty of and beyond that, if there are places that I want to reach, I never really have I never really have problems reaching them. The so as such the transit is very interesting. The landscapes are a landscapes are a very mixed bag because in some ways Hesse is a mirror of is a mirror of Germany as a whole because you have a very as you have a very heavily industrialized north and heavily industrialized south, an oddly pastoral north, and between them and between them uh, a substantial amount of a substantial amount of degrees of transition, and that leads to a variety of different sites, a variety of different and a variety of different landscapes, a variety of different ways in which the local geographical boundary has been um, has been depicted or really is presented and made available to the to both the people here and the people who are traveling through. It is it is in that sense I have to say very rewarding to actually uh, to actually be here and to actually take advantage of everything. As for industrial options, well, yeah, they exist and they are plentiful. There are some industries that there are some industries that aren't really represented at this particular scale, but but in general, I find that I find that the job options available very reflect a wide degree of fields of activity, and and as such, there is always something. As such, there is always something for basically anyone. So for that reason, I am very happy to proclaim Hessen as the as the best of Germany's Bundesländer to live in. And yeah, that was my list. That was my video. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed it, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the topic of the video itself or to my particular ranking, that is what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I primarily talk about the print medium and selected works therein, so if that sounds like it could be of interest to you, then I suggest you go ahead and check that out. It's in the description down below, right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. Should that not be of interest to you, then I suggest you stay on this channel and go through my extensive backlog, where aside from the occasional ranking video on miscellaneous topics, I primarily do reviews, overviews, or pitches for television and cinema. But I also touch upon a variety of other things: gaming, politics, not necessarily news, but things like that. So if that sounds like it could be of interest to you, well then I suggest you go ahead and check them out and check out my backlog. If none of what I've suggested sounds like it's of interest to you, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was it for me. So until next time, I have been the One Take Man.